I'm sure many of you in this room understand that there's nothing in the world worse than being broken up with. This is something Britney Spears herself found and chronicled in her story, Hit Me Baby One More Time, in which she recites the line, "This loneliness is killing me, so call me once, hit me baby one more time." Now this took guts. In an era in which women were not expected to be forward with a relationship, this became a rallying call for women to take a more active part in their relationships. Britney Spears acknowledged that although she faced overwhelming adversity, although she could face embarrassment from the public community, she voiced her concerns to the world as a whole, issuing a #1 platinum hit. Britney Spears encapsulates lived through something horrible that I'm sure all of us would live through, but would choose not to. This is a fate worse than death, being broken up with. And in my speech today, I will prove to you that sometimes you have to come over adversity, and that sometimes you have to come over overwhelming odds and embarrassment in order to see through what you want and to avoid fates worse than death. And to do that, I'll use 3 examples: Pope John Paul II, Vladimir Putin, and North Korea's policy of military first. So firstly, on to Pope John Paul II. So Pope John Paul II was very famously from Poland, but was Pope throughout the 1970s and 1980s, a period in which Poland was under harsh communist rule under the iron fist of the Soviets. Now, Pope John Paul II saw this as a crucial problem in Poland, that his Catholic nation yearned to be free, but yet was kept under an iron grip. Pope John Paul II rallied Polish steelworkers, rallied Polish shipbuilders, and used their Catholicism as a common factor in order to create a cohesion within the Polish community. He ignited riots in Polish shipyards along the coast on the Baltic Sea, and used this common factor in order to lead these people into a new and brighter future. Pope John Paul II, one of his major goals was to overthrow communist rule in Europe, because it fundamentally stood against his foundational beliefs in God. The agnostic beliefs of the Soviet Union clashed sharply with Pope John Paul II's personal faith. And he, through his faith and inspiring faith in others, rose up against the overwhelming odds of the Soviets and threw them over in 1989. Now on to my second example, Vladimir Putin. Now, I want you to all take an experiment. Close your eyes and imagine Vladimir Putin in your mind. You can see him valiantly charging across an open field in Siberia, riding a horse, bare chest, holding a shotgun under his arms, looking into the vast expanse of Siberia, acknowledging that he himself is a great man. This is unlike any world leader in modern times. Imagine any other world leader, Xi Jinping, Theresa May. Impossible, I say. Vladimir Putin has been alienated from the international community because of this extreme characterization that is created for himself. But this is a very intentional effort. In Russia, it is important for men to live up to the idyllic image of a Russian man. A man who takes charge, a man who is strong, and a man who appreciates the great Russian wilderness. Vladimir Putin understood that to maintain his power in Russia, he would have to ignite rivalries in the Western world, to rise up against the powers that threw down the Soviet Union, that threw down the nation he loved for so many years. Vladimir Putin acknowledged that a fate worse than death would be another failure of the Russian state, and he did everything in his power to overcome that. Now on to North Korea. After the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, the North Korean people lost their main source of aid and financial security from the Soviet Union. This led Kim Il-sung, the newly crowned supreme leader of North Korea in 1994, to issue a military-first Juche policy, which issued that North Korea would be entirely self-reliant. Now, of course, we must recognize this as a complete failure of the North Korean state, but not for the reasons that you would think. North Korea did this in order to increase their grasp in the public space. And we can see that it is actually a great success of the Korean people. Although they are starving, although their economy is near collapse, they are actually a major player in world economics. That is insane. A country in which their people do not have enough food or is a major player in global economic sphere is only because of this military-first policy. It's only because North Korea prioritized the nuclear weapons program and have a stake in international security. North Korea understood that they had to alienate the United States, that they had to alienate the Western world in order to even have a thought of gaining grasp in the international sphere. So what have I told you today, ladies and gentlemen? I've showed you that Britney Spears did what was right, She should have spoken out to the international community. She should have exposed the wrongs of the male-dominated society. And I've shown you through my 3 examples, Pope John Paul II, Vladimir Putin, and the North Korean Juche policy, that she was right. Thank you very much.